Well, hey Gabe, I want to run a game.
Okay, you should do it.
Well, the problem is we've been playing insert generic tabletop game here for a while, but I don't know if I feel comfortable running that.
That's totally okay. I mean, you run something else. There's a bunch of games to play.
Yeah, but it's what everyone's used to, you know?
Yeah, okay, I get that. It's a little terrifying and frustrating.
Well, I mean, part of me does want to run insert other generic tabletop name here.
Yeah, okay. Try it. What do you have to lose? It's everything to gain.
Well, I do know the rules of it pretty well, or at least I think I do. I was reading through the book and I just like the theme of it. I like the themes that it has and I like some of the mechanics that are in the game, you know? If you like it and you feel like you're comfortable with it, I think giving it a chance is one of the best things you can do.
Legitimately.
I just feel like since everyone does, like play that thing and they know that thing and they like that thing, that's the only thing that they'll want to play, and it kind of makes me worried.
I understand being worried, and I absolutely understand that concern, but
You're right.
you can do this.
You know what? I'm going to ask if they want to play it, and if not, maybe I'll have another group that wants to try it out. And
That's
then
true.
it gives me a chance to try to practice my skills and kind of delve into something else. Thanks.
That's absolutely it. You're welcome.
And you can do it too.
Absolutely right.
I like this guy.
This guy's pretty handsome.
Hello. And welcome to another episode of Tabletop Tabletalk with me, Gabe, also known as GabeJamesGames, on pretty much anywhere else on the internet. Thank you for joining me on this Friday. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my ridiculous little skit at the beginning, because if we're going to have these conversations and if we're going to do this stuff and if we're going to talk, let's just have fun and be ridiculous, because we have the opportunity to. So first off, today's topic is about finding the games for you, especially in a world of infinite choices. There are so many tabletop games out there. There are so many tabletop role-playing games out there. There are hundreds of thousands of games that you could potentially run. How do you find the ones for you? Now, with most things I say, there's not a singular answer to that question. But there's a couple different ways that we can approach it. And as we're going through the show today, if you have questions that you're thinking about, put the word question in all caps before your question, and then later on in the show, we'll get to some of them. Thank you to those of you who came into the stream today. Thank you to those of you watching on YouTube later. Thank you to any of you who just came here to listen and be a part of this conversation on how we can all be better GMs. I also want to shout out to Code 24, which Roll20 is still raising money for. If you don't know about Code 24, it is a group to donate to that actively work on giving more opportunities to Black and Latinx people in different types of industries, especially the design industry, which is incredibly important, as you can guess, to me as a Black game designer and writer who never expected to have some of the opportunities that I have now, and am very grateful that I do. And I also want to see more people have those opportunities. The second announcement, just a reminder that next month, October 23rd to the 25th, is Roll20Con. There will be a bunch of different things happening. I have a couple things that I have ideas for that you'll see announcements closer to that time. I'm really excited for the rest of the weekends in October. So with the announcements done and out of the way, let's start talking about finding the games for you. There are, like I said, so many games that exist. Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Starfinder, Kids with Bikes, Kids with Brooms, GURPS, Shadow of the Demon Lord, Zweihander. I could go on and on and on and on and on. So the question is, what is the right or are the right games for you, especially when it comes to running. Because as a GM, you might love being a party member in a game. You might love being just a player character. You might not love running that system, because when you are a singular character and you only have so many rules and guidelines and notes that you have to follow, it's sometimes significantly easier. When you're a person that's orchestrating a story, that's guiding a narrative, there's a lot more to pay attention to. There's a lot more to remember. There's a lot more to keep track of. And there's a lot more information mechanically that you might have to have. The party might come to you for questions on how something works. And if it's a system that you only know how the dual wielding samurai works, it can be a little difficult. Because a lot of information doesn't mean that you're bad at understanding the game. It might just be that it's overwhelming. So there's a bunch of different game terms that come up. There's games that are considered rules heavy. A game with like a bunch of mechanics, a wide variety of actions, opposite of rules light. And there's rules light, which is that uses general mechanics, a subset of actions, and opposite of rules heavy. So a rules heavy game might have 6 different types of attacks, and there are sub-attacks to those attacks. A rules light game might literally say you can do these 2 types of attacks, and there's a couple options of how it can happen. One is not better than the other. One might be more comfortable than the other for someone. Someone might have a bunch, I'm going to say crunchy versus smooth. That's how I'm going to say it. A crunchy system has a bunch of rules to it and guidelines. And it's not bad. There's a lot of information to use and pull from, and it gives you a bunch of options. One that's smooth might be like, it's this, and then this, and then this. You can go this or this, and then this. It's a smoother progression because there's a lot less information that you have to process. Some people love crunchy games. They love having all of the different mechanics and notes and everything. If I cast this spell, I want the 18 different options that it can blend into and then explode into 12 of the others. It's really exciting. Sometimes that's a lot. It literally depends on the day for me if I want a game that's crunchy or smooth. And I might think I want to do something one day, and then I'm just not entirely up to it. It's a lot of information to process, or I'll be sitting there reading notes, going through, scrolling. Yep, that one. Oh, I'm so ready for this. And then just having all of these ideas that I want to go into. So what does it mean to find the game for you? So side note, I'm almost positive there isn't only one game for you to run. There might just be that it's easier for you to run one game that you just feel more comfortable running. It doesn't mean it's the same game that you prefer to play. And to be very clear, it's okay if the game you want to run isn't the game you want to play. Because the GM is still technically a player, but maybe it's not the game that you want to be a character in, per se. So one of the steps that I don't think we really think about when it comes to GMing, and it's sometimes a step that's we're already past or we've already decided, but deciding what game you're going to run. Yeah, oftentimes you've already got a game in mind, especially if you're just switching seats with somebody else. If you just decide, hey, I just want to run, you know what, I'll take the next session that we run. It's exciting, but you don't have to want to run the same thing. You might have already have it selected because you're just switching seats with someone, but if someone is taking a break from the GM seat, it could also mean you're taking a break from the game you were all playing. Someone who loves playing the game, when they're a member of the party, might actually prefer a different game when they're running it. And like, I understand the concept of my group only wants to play this game, so if I'm going to run a game for them, I have to do this game. We're going to come back to that because that's closer to like the style of how you run the game. But if there's a particular game you want to run, what do you think the reasons are? What about that game, that system, do you like that stands out to you? Do you want to run this different system because you like the world? Do you want to run a different system because you like mechanics in the world? Do you want to run this system because there's an NPC character that is a little blue squirrel-like creature that may or may not cause havoc and chaos that you absolutely want to make a pet or put inside of your robot chest, which is not something I have ever done, and I don't know what you're talking about. So is it about the theme that makes you want to run it? Or is it something that's built into the system itself? Are the mechanics that you really enjoy the way they make everything come together? And that's why you want to go back to it. That's why it intrigues you. That's why it interests you and makes you want to work in that world. So I said I'd circle back, and I'm a man of my word. Consider the mechanic system of games that you've played, and let's talk about them. If you've literally only played one tabletop game, that's fine. If you've played 30, that's fine. There's no better or worse in this circumstance because we're talking about things that we like from games. So I'm going to give you about 15, 20 seconds to think about this. And you can just answer as you go on, as you think of it, as it comes to your mind. But think about 1 to 3 mechanics from any games that you've played that you really liked. It could be more than one game, and that's fine. It could appear only in one game, and that's great. But just 1 to 3 mechanics of a system that you really enjoyed, that you enjoyed that mechanic of. There's specific ways that people did attack actions. There's specific ways that people do spell casting. There's things from all different games that have different mechanics, but there might be that one from a game, even if you didn't love everything else, that one mechanic that you were like, that was actually really cool. So refreshment scenes in Lady Blackbird. I actually don't even know what that is. But off the top, like right off the bat, I like the name of it. The character party building process and Things from the Flood. Monsters of the Week movesets for playbooks, especially at the start of the mystery, made creating a hook really fun and collaborative. The setting building from the New World of Darkness. So all of these different mechanics. All of these different things that just stood out. Clocks from Blades in the Dark. Jenga tower pulled for moves. Wanderhome's collaborative scene setting. And everyone's been naming different things. Ooh, the dice and Edge of the Empire. Yeah. Just from seconds of thinking about it. So I'm going to give you a couple of mine and keep telling me about yours. And then we'll just name all the different things because there might even be things that people don't know about. So right off the bat, I like the feature of fate points, luck points, that kind of thing where a character can reroll a die. I enjoy that aspect of giving them a second chance, even if it's just only for one session. Just having that second chance to twist the fates and try again. It's fun to see what they do with that moment because I like seeing how they use that fortune. Do they spend it on something playful, like flirting with the shopkeep, or do they spend it on a moment that's terrifying, like fighting a gigantic abomination? It doesn't have to be something that is solely seen as it's overpowered, because oftentimes that comes across, but it's just a twist of fortune. It's just a twist of fate. For me, I love that. Because if the only way I can give my party conflict and a challenge is if they don't get second chances, then that's not really my style. I like giving them challenges that even with second chances, it's something they have to go even further beyond. It's something they have to consider the next step of. So someone even said the creative form to create characters in Malifaux with cards. Or luck in Pulp Cthulhu. It's fun. Final Judgment in Peliquin. See, and right off the bat, there's a lot of games that I've either never heard of or I didn't know about the mechanics of. But I'm intrigued. And I'm interested. So let me give you a second one. Another mechanic that I like is from Burn Bright. If you don't know Burn Bright, it's a game built up in and for Roll20, a sci-fi tabletop game where you and a party are exploring the stars. There's essentially a living spaceship. There's actually an adventure module on the Roll20 marketplace called Burning Daylight. It's pretty damn cool. I got a chance to take a look through it in a GM look, and there's a lot that I really like about how the system came together. And if you saw that video, you can tell from the way I talk about it that it's a very genuine excitement, because I was very overexcited. I'm like, oh, this, oh, that, oh, this thing, oh, that's cool. Oh, I like this thing too. Oh, there's so many things. Yeah. But from Burn Bright, I really like that in combat, the party goes first. So the turn order is that enemies declare what they do at the beginning. Then the party performs the actions that they want to do. And then after that, the enemies that declared their actions perform the actions they declared. And there's ways to switch around what they had already declared, what they're going to do, what they're going to follow through with. There's like extra mechanics for that, but we can go into that another day, because I could spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about that. And as I said, you can tell from my reaction, I was very excited about it. I love that mechanic. I'm going to go to the third one, and then I'm going to elaborate on why I like each of those mechanics a little bit more, because I have stories for each of those situations. And then, as well as talking about your GM style and how you find the game that you want. So my third choice is Tales from the Loop. Yes, that game again. And every time I talk about Tales from the Loop, I talk about the fact that in the game you play as kids. And in that game, the rule is kids can't die. That is a mechanical part of the game. I love that for simple reasons. It gives a chance to delve into a character head first and not be terrified that you're going to make a mistake that kills your character. It gives your party a chance and the comfort of knowing you might do something stupid, you might get in trouble, but your character cannot die. It's giving them a safety. It's giving them a comfort. It's giving them an understanding of what they can do and not be brutally, ridiculously, frustratingly punished for it. So we're going to go back to the fortune, the fate, the luck. I really like that in detail because that is a part of my GM style. I want the party to have second chances at things that they really care about, because they're really invested. If I'm not just automatically giving it to them, because sometimes I do. Sometimes I just like, you know what? They really want this. They're really excited about it. They really care about it. I'm going to just give them this role and just say that they succeeded. Or say that was enough. Or say that worked. But if I don't do it that way, I want to give them a second chance. Or if they have the thought, knowing there's a second chance, then they might take more risks. Then they might be a little bit more comfortable. Then they're not thinking, all right, well, if I fail this, then everything is going to go wrong. If I fail this, there's no way I can try again. Or if I fail this, there's no way it's going to work. And challenge can be fun, but if you know your party, you know whether or not they will find that fun. And not all of them will. Some will. But parties are flexible and different. And until you feel like you really know them, it can be impossible to gauge how it's going to go. On the Burn Bright system, the combat mechanic of the players go first, I love that because then the party isn't really competing on who's going to do what first. They don't feel, oh, I rolled low on my initiative, now I have to be last. Or, oh, I really wanted to plan this thing and now I can't actively do it because I'm so far down. It's one less thing to keep track of. And also, when they jump into a situation, they actively have the comfort of, okay, if you do this, and then you do this, and I do this, and I do this, and it all just happens together. They can all plan together and do it at the same time. They get agency over how they act. They get agency over the situation. And it makes one hell of a difference. And if they know the enemies are going to act after them, if they know the enemies aren't going to do anything after the enemies do all of their actions, all of their moves, all of their attacks, all of their choices, then the next circumstance, the next time it's the party's turn, they're like, okay, all of that happened, now we can plan for the rest. And if the enemies declare their actions in the beginning, then the party actively knows, okay, well, this person is going to take a sniper shot. This person's actually holding a grenade. This person seems to be holding a strange device. They get a chance to strategize and figure out, who do we want to target first? Who is the biggest threat? What is the biggest concern? And adapt and evolve and work from there. And then the third thing about characters just having an invincibility. That's something that I pull into a lot of my sessions just for level 1 in games. I will often tell them at level 1, your character will very unlikely get into a situation where they will die. Unless they decide to crawl into the mouth of a dragon, which I would have to try to make them avoid, but people will do impossibly amazing things to startle you. They will blow your mind. So if you give them that safety net of saying level 1, they have this sense of invincibility. Level 1, they cannot be killed. They might be knocked unconscious, but then maybe there is an item that guards their body and restores them back to the town or teleports them back. It's like a newbie badge, a newbie license, and it only works until your power exceeds a certain point. And there's dozens of ways to narratively say what is happening and how it happens. But that's why I like finding different games. Because there's a bunch of different games that I enjoy, but I don't always feel like I can run well. And it took me a long time to find my own style to run them well. And when I say running them well, it's entirely a subjective thing. Because running them well to me is just having the party run through the story and we're all having a good time. It doesn't mean that I'm using all of the mechanics that a system has. There might be more that I can actually keep track of. And in a lot of games, they have pages and 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 pages of mechanics. Which is not a bad thing, but it's a lot for me. So what I've done is I started to play different games. I find the games that I like. I find the mechanics of games that I like. And when I'm feeling comfortable, I might pull mechanics from that into my world. I don't have to make an entirely new game to do it, but I can say, I like the core of this world. I like the core of this gameplay. I like the core of the mechanics that I have here. But I really liked this mechanic from this game. And I really liked this mechanic from this game. Because you are the one who is running this world. You are the one who is guiding this narrative. You are the one who is guiding this story. And rulebooks in your hand can be guidelines. They can be guidelines for how you want to tell this story. You are playing a game with your party. And they might have a preference for how mechanics may work. They might have a preference or ask, is it okay if I do this instead? Because creativity is one of the best gifts I feel like you can give a GM. If you are creative and you're excited and you're passionate about it, 9 times out of 10, my reaction is going to be absolutely. Let's do it. Let's see how it works. Show me, tell me how that works. I played a session of Altered Carbon recently. And the GM, Xander, had a system for giving the party characters rumors beforehand. And it was a nice little extra mechanic. And I had thought that this was just built into the system, but it was actually something that Xander had gotten from somebody else and then adapted and kept going. And my mind was blown because it was so smooth. It felt right. I was like, oh, they tell the GM to do this thing before every session and set it up. But it was just a mechanic that Xander had adapted and continued and added to this game. And I was absolutely astounded, because it showed that pulling something from another place, pulling something from another game, pulling something from another experience, it can still always blend into the games that you're running. A prime example is a very common role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons. I have legitimately talked to a group that I'm planning to do a one-shot with about adopting the burn bright mechanic for combat. I love the idea of the party all being able to go at the same time, and then the enemies go afterwards. Then they can strategize. It's showing both sides acting in large mass, and I love that. We also played Burn Bright, but that's besides the point. But after they played it and after they saw how that mechanic worked, they wanted to see it in more games that they played. They felt comfortable. They felt safer. They felt like they could strategize. And it showed how many different games you can adapt. So when you're finding the games for you, they don't have to be the games that you know everything about. It should be the games that you're excited to delve into. It should be the games that you're curious about. And it's impossible to know all of the games that exist or all of the games that you want to play. If we literally just take a look here. So let's take a look at the different character sheets that Roll20 has. Pathfinder, Altered Carbon, Alice is Missing, City of Mist, Outbreak, Conan, D&D, Aegon, Aliens Marines, Archmage Empire, Arcanus, Arkham. We're still in A's. There are so many games that you can play and stories that you can tell and character sheets. Okay, hold on. Fairy Tale. Nope. The anime nerd in me is kind of screaming, but I'm going to reel it back in. There are so many games and systems that you have opportunities here for. And you have systems like Roll20 where even if you just want to test it and dive into it, the character sheets are going to make learning this stuff a little bit easier. The opportunities are there. So what is a game that you have played, but you have pulled a mechanic from another game, another system that you really liked? What is a game that you have run that you pulled mechanics from elsewhere because they stuck out to you? What is something that stuck out? That's a mechanic you've never gotten to use, but you really wanted to see. I'm also a big fan of games that use wounds, actually. I didn't think that I would like wound systems for a long time. And I played at least, I can think of 4 different games that have wound systems. And I thought, I'm not going to like this. This is going to be hard. Then if I get hurt, I'm going to die so fast. And then I started looking into it more and more. And figuring out different ways to adapt it. Because there are systems that have wounds, but it doesn't have to be as brutal. There are systems that you could have 2 wounds, and then you drink a potion and you heal those 2 wounds. It was learning and figuring out ways to adapt the system to play for me. To play for me, to play for the party that I have with me, and to reach a point where we're having a good time and we're comfortable, we're enjoying the system, because that's what's most important. So look into the different games that you want to try running. Look into the games that you're curious of delving into. Because when you run these games, when you're finding these games for you, the games that you want to try, the games you want to run, the games you want to share with people, please keep in mind, you don't have to do everything the way it says. You can adapt them to be the way you want to be the way that you're comfortable with playing. And then you can add more mechanics as you go on. You can pull 5 out of the 30 mechanics in a game to get started, and then start adding in the rest, and more and more and more as you go further in. Or you might think this mechanic actually makes this gameplay smoother. You felt like this mechanic actually makes this game comfortable. You really, really love this game system, but it is too complicated for you to run, but you love some aspects of it. So maybe there's another one that works for you, and you can still pull bits and pieces of it. Pull the things that you like so that it blends together. Because it's narrative. It's narrative, it's mechanical, and it's creative and clever thinking. As the GM, you are helping this world come together. So let's right now, let's make a game for you. This is going to be the second exercise that we do together. It is a game that literally just uses 6 dice, 6 d6s. Each one has a different stat, whatever. They can do whatever they want. We'll say the stats are strength, cunning, wit, charm, magic, extra. I don't know. Ignore this. It's less important. But in this game, it is the universe of whatever you want. If you had to take a mechanic from a game that you've played and then put it into a game, what would you pick? And Caboose, the mechanic was for the game Burn Bright, and essentially the player, so the enemies declare their actions, then the party declares. So the enemy declares their actions, the party does their actions, and then the enemy does the actions they declared. And it's in the game Burn Bright, so on Roll20. If you get a chance, I would say absolutely check it out, because there are a lot of things in that game that I feel like make the game very friendly for GMs and players alike. But yes, if you had to pick one mechanic from a game that you've played and then put it into something without even knowing what the game was going to be like, but you're just like, I really like that mechanic and I want it to be in a game, pick one. There should be, I think, 2 actual plays. There is one that actually Salt or Ginger is part of, and there's another one called Burning Daylight. So let's see. And I'm just going to start writing these down as we say them. Yes, Nova points. All right. 4 adjectives, traits to sheets. I like it. And this is another exercise that is literally just going to show how creative people really are, especially in collaborative senses. It's why when you're GMing, sometimes it's nice to talk to other people, even if they're not a part of your party, because they might give you amazing ideas. Yeah, using all the different die types. So if that encourages people to use all the different stats they have, I love it. All right, let's see. Narrative dice. Yep. So I'm gonna, you can honestly, you can, if you think of more than one, if you think of just things you really love, anything. Because at the end of this, I'm going to tell you what this game would play like. I'm going to sit here and we're going to legitimately come up with a game right here and now together. I guess there should be a Discord for this. I'll talk to the people about that later. That would be nice. That'd be a good place to ask questions. See, this is the beauty of collaboration. The I know a guy mechanic, where each player can basically say at some point in the setting that they can know someone to help them narratively through the plot. That's amazing. I adore that idea, actually. Okay. I'm getting ideas. I am getting ideas. Okay. Now I need to look up a synonym. Let's see. Because I spent a good 35 minutes talking at you. So now I want to talk with you. So are there any other mechanics that you can really think of that really stick out, that if you were in a game and you were playing through it, you would love to have them in, even without knowing how the rest of the game really functions? Any of this stuff. It could be stuff that gives more narrative. It could be stuff that gives player agency. Anything. Test my brain. Inspiration. Tokens to take control of the narrative. Pushing rolls. Yep. The body damage. Oh yeah, aces. Acing a roll. Yep. See, and look, there are so many different ideas. You can use more actions to pump up a spell. Okay. GM intrudes in exchange for XP. You know what? That's interesting. Like if a GM intruded you, and they're asking, can I take control of the situation, and then give you a luck point port, and then maybe it puts them in a more difficult situation. Yeah. So right off the bat, there are so many different pieces from games that we like. And you might find a game that you just love the core aspect of it so much. So what I'm going to do now is, without even giving more mechanics for a game, I'm just going to do the bare minimum of what I have. And then if you liked these mechanics, you could put them in your own. Because as you find the games for you, you find the games you're comfortable running, you find the games you want to delve into, you can add to it and elevate the experience for you and your party. So, we have a game where there are points that are called Fortuity Points. And maybe every player has 2 or 3 fortuity points. And the fortuity points can be used in a variety of ways. So you decide that you want your party to be playing, we'll say, it's a game called Gabble. And you know what? You really like Gabble. You haven't really found very many people to play it with, but you really like this game. And you're thinking, how can you add a little bit more so that other people might be as interested in it? How can you add more to it so other people might be curious about it? So you come up with a little system for your own called Fortuity Points. And every player gets 2 to 3 Fortuity Points. And maybe they get an extra one at the end of a session for completing a session. And they can get them back by letting the GM take over the narrative for a moment, by letting the GM take over for a circumstance and add more to it. They can spend fortuity points to practically stop time, like an FTL. They can gain a fortuity point if they roll every one of their skills at least once. They can use a fortuity point to give an ability increase to a skill they rolled. They can use a fortuity point to do the I know a guy mechanic. Can we say that I know someone here actually and I'll spend a fortuity point for it? Absolutely. They can use a fortuity point to push rolls. They can use a fortuity point to ace a roll. They can use a fortuity point to pump up a spell that they have. And all of these are different mechanics from different games, but we figure out how to use them in the game that we have found for us. You add a little bit extra because when your party is talking to you, add some adjectives or character traits to your sheet. They might be entirely narrative, but they could add some interest to it because that's just a mechanic that you love to see. And add your own narrative dice. Like talking from the Star Wars RPG. It doesn't have to be something that the party sees and the party is affected by, but it's something that you add in. It's something you add in maybe for yourself. Because that's what mechanics are. Mechanics don't always have to affect the rest of the party as well. You can add mechanics just for yourself, and chances are, unless you want them to be involved and want them to see it and want them to know it, they will only know as much that you add as you tell. And this is all stuff just from a game made up called Gabble that doesn't actually exist. But the mechanics could work together. I have a D6 and I'm like, you know what? I really like the art of this game. I like how small and minimalized the rules are. And then I could add more to myself. I can add more if I would like. Doesn't exist yet. And I'm like, you know what? I rolled a 6. I really like that 6 and I'm going to spend a fortuity point to enhance that spell. And I'm going to add a fortuity point, a second one. So let's see. Increase what I rolled. And that was a circumstance where I might have just found a game that I really like the core basis of it. And all I did was add on to it with mechanics of other things that I liked, other things that I enjoyed, other things that were interesting. That is the beauty of being a GM. Well, one of many. Because you can add to this world as they do. You can add mechanics that may feel fun. You can add ideas that make it interesting. And you can also pull out things that you don't enjoy. You can remove extra mechanics that may make it difficult in a way that neither you nor the party is having fun. If this wounding rule, if this poison rule, if this injury rule is actively making it more stressful than it is fun, but you love the rest of this game, take it out. You're not playing a game wrong by doing that. You're playing a game right for the rest of you. When you are adding in or removing aspects that make party members uncomfortable or make it stressful, You're literally just making the game more available. I think that's more important when you're finding the game for you. Find the games that you like the core system of. Find the game that you like a variety of the aspects of. And then work with that. You might like this game just because it legitimately says you get to play as kids. Kids don't die. You also get a cool notebook. And if you're like, that's it. That's what I want. I'm in. You can always add more to that. You might be like, oh, well, you know what? I like the idea of Fireball. And then you just kind of reskin it to fit in the game somehow. I don't know how you're going to give a child Fireball, but I'm not here to judge your choices. Find the game that you like the most of and you feel comfortable with. And then take that and use that and harness it. And then after you found the game that feels right for you, the games that feel right for you, the games that give you the story tools that you want to use, add on to it. Build up on it. And do more and more. So let's start looking at any questions that people have had to start. Because I have, again, talked at you for a little bit. We've done a couple of the exercises, and I'd like to have more conversation than just me speaking at you, especially about a game that does not exist yet called Gabble. So question, how do you get buy-in with a group that's hesitant to run something different? It's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of conversation and communication, which is obviously no surprise. But I would recommend asking them what makes them hesitant, or what are they hesitant about? Especially if hesitation comes from fear of doing something wrong, or not playing a game right, or not playing a game well, or not playing in a game that wants to be played. If you can reassure that that's not the case, if you can reaffirm that this is something we're doing for fun and to enjoy, and if something goes wrong, I'm going to help you through it, it might reassure any concerns or worries they have. Because we all want to do something right. We don't want to be the ones dragging a game down. We don't want to be the ones that are causing a narrative to slow or causing a narrative to have issues. And I understand that very well. So honestly, I would say ask. Ask what the hesitation is. And if you figure it out, you might actually give them comfort enough to be like, that sounds fun. If they know they're not doing something wrong, if they know that this is just to try something new, that might reassure them enough to feel comfortable in stepping out of it. Yeah, a lot of my people in my group are hesitant to play the game they haven't run yet, so I'm usually the one that tries it out with new systems. I'm hesitant to run a lot of games that I haven't played. And then after I've played them, I realize how excited I am to do it. And there's nothing like it. After I play the games and I see how much fun it actually is, that's why I talked about Tales from the Loop so much. That's why I started playing Zweihander. That's why I looked into like the second edition of Pathfinder, because I'd seen stuff that was interesting, and it's games that I'd either never heard of and never considered, or stuff that I just wasn't sure if I was going to be good enough to do it, if I was going to do something wrong in trying to do it. And then when I got that like affirmation, I was okay. So what's the best way to find out about new systems? I feel like there's a bunch of different ways to do it. One of the things that I do legitimately is I showed previously, I realized how many character sheets exist for games already, and having a character sheet that works, that you don't have to do the extra work for, makes a world of a difference. So that's why I would literally like sometimes go to Roll20's site and then just click the character sheet button and just see some of the ideas that I have. Because if you look here, there is a Fallout print and play. Right there. I didn't know that existed until actually this second. But you might find something that just sounds interesting. Or you might find a system by another group that you already liked. Like maybe you really like the Fate system, but then you discover there's a Dresden's File, there's a Demon Hunters, there's a Mind Jammer. So that, I feel like, is a good way to start, because then you can see what character sheets already exist. Outside of that, social media. Social media is a great way to do it because there are plenty of things on Twitter where people are talking about games they're working on. Even Kickstarter is a great way to do it, I'd say. People are talking about Kickstarter projects, and you can even scroll through ones that have already been made previously and then see what they have up, what they're working on next, what they want to do next, what they're excited to next. And tabletop Twitter is a huge thing. There is stuff for tabletop Twitter everywhere. Yeah. All right. Yep. Yeah. Honestly, even if you ask tabletop Twitter or just social media, hey, I'm looking for a game to play, and if you say mechanics that you like, and enjoy, then people might actually know what to look for. They might know what to recommend. My favorite non-mainstream system. It's tough. It's Tales from the Loop. That's a game that that was a circumstance of finding a game for me. That's why I talk about it so much. I will talk about this system so much, and I guess one of these days I'm going to have to sit down and talk with some of the people that I played with, or just go through a character creation with all of you, because the game let me create my character in like 10 minutes, and then I figured that out, like how to play the character immediately after. I've heard of Blades in the Dark. I haven't played it yet, but I feel like Blades in the Dark might be another circumstance where it's a game for me. But Tales from the Loop, I knew what my character was doing after 10 minutes. The character creation was easy. There weren't so many mechanics that I didn't understand, but it gave the opportunity to add more to it as time went on. And actually, we can probably take, let's see. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. I don't know why I named it. Don't look at me. But Tales from the Loop was a good prime example of finding a game for me. Because I had these numbers set up. I had the conditions. And this is the whole character sheet. This is everything that I needed. I could add in relationships. I could add in iconic items. I described the hideout. Then I had any extra notes. But this was the whole character sheet. And when I had seen this, I was excited. And then when I played it, I knew this was one of the games for me. This was one of the games that I could run, and I could keep track of what was happening. I could keep track of what the players needed. I could keep track of what the players' stats were like, because I didn't have to go through multiple pages. I could literally be like, what's a Gaha's body? Oh, it's a 2. Perfect. Then I clicked it. It would tell me what the roll was. It's perfect. So as you just ask for suggestions or look into new things, that's going to be one of the best ways that you're going to find different options. I absolutely recommend it if you get a chance. Yeah. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask some questions. I'm actually going to take a quick 2-minute bio break. I will be right back. If you have questions, again, put question in all caps right before your question. I'm going to take a quick bio, and then I will be right back. And we will keep going with the rest of Tabletop Tabletalk. We'll talk about finding, and well, after you've found the game for you, after you've added the mechanics to the game for you, we can talk a little bit more about talking to the party. But please, if you need, get up, walk around, stretch, have some water, hydrate. Hydration is important because no matter what, you are still a person. Please take care of yourself because the longer you are here, the better. I'll be right back. Drink water. Hydration is important. I will yell that from the rooftops. Okay, yes, water is important, hydration is important. I stand by this and I will yell this from the rooftops all day, every day. Finding the game for you, it's tough. And I still haven't found all the games I feel like are for me. There's things that I love about Dungeons and Dragons, and then I also have to figure out what I want to keep or what I want to change. And people will often try to tell you how to play the games that you play. When you're in a group, it becomes a group decision. When it is feedback from outside the group, you have no obligation to listen. The game that you play and the way that you manifest that play is entirely up to the people at your table. That is the most important thing. Even if someone is telling you mechanically you're doing something wrong, if you're doing it as a choice because it's more fun that way, it's more interesting, it takes more pressure off of the party, that's okay. So finding the game for you can also relate to finding the group for you. But first, there's another question. Tips, inspiration, or systems with good rules for creating good NPCs. That's tough, actually. I can't think of any that come off the top of my head for that. And that's a really interesting point. I haven't come across many systems that give me, I feel like, tips for creating NPCs. There's the mechanical rules and such, but for me, that sort of system would work better if it was more like loose guidelines, loose ideas, loose things to work with, suggestions for personality traits or suggestions for ideas. Let me think. Oh, okay, so Urban Shadows, all you have to do is come up with a look and drive, and they have examples. That's exciting. Oh, actually, okay, there was a game that I played that was fun, that was very helpful in coming up with character stuff, and it was actually a Jane Austen-based game. I think it was called Good Society. And that gave suggestions for character background, that gave suggestions for character personality, gave suggestions for the clothing that they wore. But it wasn't so strict about how everything had to be. It was suggestions and a good basis and a good guideline. And I actually think that the question was good. I think that we would do well from games having more offering of that. Instead of telling you how characters are going to be defined all the time, if they give you suggestions of how characters may be. Because narratively, the look doesn't necessarily matter as much as the mechanics that you have. The mechanics that you have that might go with a specific look if you define it that way. The mechanics that work with a specific weapon or armor are what matters. But then the narrative look of it beforehand and afterwards is entirely up to you. That's part of what makes it so interesting. And I really love Good Society for that. Yeah. And I see that we have more questions coming in. So let's keep them coming. I like actually being able to talk instead of just me talking at you, because I will do that if I have to. And I love that currently in chat, people are literally talking about planning to play games together. And my heart is kind of soaring. How do you balance planning and improvisation each session as a GM? For myself, I almost always just create a start result that I want and then an end result. And in between, it's a lot of guessing and estimation because I don't know how they're going to get to the end result. And one of the best things that I can do as a GM is give opportunities to turn them back in that direction or lead them to that direction. If I'm planning out, I might plan out just things that I can insert into the adventure. So I have a start, I have a finish, and then I have, uh, let's call them toppings. Um, I don't know what is going to be given for me. I don't know what fillings they're going to want. I don't know what things, I don't know what routes they're going to take. But let's, I'm not even going to say toppings because then I'm going to start thinking about food and then I'm going to be hungry and then I'm going to be mad that I made myself hungry. Um, I have two pieces of a maze. I have the start piece and I have the end piece, and they both have their locations. And the party is building the pieces to the maze in between. And every now and then, they might be like, you know what? We're going to put this piece that's a left turn. And what I usually do is I might just have another piece that connects that left turn back in the direction they need to go. So if they're going really far off the map of the idea that I have, just introducing something that narratively brings them back for whatever driving factor. I've said in another tabletop talk, I had said it was a circumstance of like if a party member was so severely interested in going back to the tavern to talk to this character, and the rest of the party needed to go to this mine to solve an issue. If I give them the opportunity to go talk to that character, and it turns out that character actually went to the mine for some reason, that's not something I had to really improv for. It was something that was just redirecting an idea they already had. Now, I might want to have some traps in there, and maybe I don't know where the traps are going to be, but I just have some traps prepared. So I just have things prepared to drop into the adventure, usually for myself, as they are navigating and doing whatever they want to do, whatever story they want to tell. If they decide they don't want to go to the dungeon, that's fine. They might decide to go into someone's home, and I could have a trap that I already prepared and just drag and drop it somewhere else. A lot of my planning is the start and the end, and then I just plan little pieces that I can include in the middle. The order that I do the pieces might not be the most important thing, because chances are the party that you have is going to have their own creative agenda, and they might need to be turned around occasionally. They might need you to just hint to where they need to go. They might go exactly where you need to go, and then your plans actually come to fruition way faster than you expected them to. So that you might need to improv a little bit to extend it. You might need to improv a little bit to make it so that the location where they were going is actually a little bit further. But I would say, for my recommendation, figure out your start and your end, and then any pieces you want to include in the middle, because they will most likely help fill in a lot of the blanks that you didn't even expect to be there. And it might even change where you want your end to be. And you won't lose as much if they don't go to that end that you had an entire planned out session for. You had an entire planned out concept for. You had an entire boss fight planned for, but they may not end up there. And it's to no fault of your own for planning. It's to no fault of theirs for wanting to do that. But your party's most likely going to surprise you. And if you let them surprise you in a way that's exciting, I feel like you'll enjoy it. All right, give me another question. One of my neighbors decided to mow the lawn, so I'm going to turn on my noise canceller. I love technology so much. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay, question. Do you find yourself importing GM creation tools from other tabletop RPGs into games you run now? Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like there's so many tools out there because games are run so differently, and people come up with new ideas all the time, and you can adapt them because at the end of the day it's about having fun. I do think it's important to respect the systems that you use, if you're pulling something from a system that you were inspired by, or if someone's like, "Hey, Gabe, why are you doing this thing?" Like I've mentioned the Burn Bright combat system. If anyone asks me why I do combat that way or where it came from, I will say I was inspired by Burn Bright because I really liked that. I really liked the way they did that. Instead of just saying, "That's just how I want to do it now. I don't care about anything else." Um, but I absolutely find myself pulling GM creation tools from other tabletop games because there's a lot of bits and pieces that I love of different things. And there's times that I love building blocks of something, but I don't love the foundation of it. But I still want to appreciate the building blocks of it. It's why I ended up making the class module because I enjoy a lot of aspects of the D&D creation stuff, but I wanted something that wasn't about those racial modifiers. And I still wanted to be able to enjoy that game system, but in a way that didn't make me uncomfortable or frustrated. So I ended up pulling that, like, and pulling something that I made into the games that I've been playing. And I've talked about the Tales from the Loop immortality thing, which is I've adjusted that so that the player characters can't die at the first level unless they do something really, 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 really stupid, like jump into a spike pit intentionally or try to get eaten by a dragon. But assumedly, if they go out and fight a monster and then get knocked unconscious, they're not going to die. And it's not just about the validation of, hey, why didn't that thing eat them? If the player actively wants their character to pass away or to die, then I'm not going to stop them. But I'm not going to punish them outright for delving into something that's obviously a dangerous experience at low levels where they don't have as much capability, they don't have as much strength, they don't have as much ability. I love pulling that from Tales from the Loop. I love the advantage system that D&D uses. I love fortune points that we see in things like Zweihander and Fate. And pulling those into games that I play with other people just so that we can all have more fun together. I like seeing their excitement when I do it. And sometimes it just makes the game a little bit smoother, not as crunchy, to use terminology from before. What else? Words are hard. If you were designing a system for real, what's the one mechanic you'd absolutely have to be to include in the game for it to be for you? So that is an interesting question because I may technically be designing a system, and there's a couple mechanics that I adopted, and one of them one of them is the note. Like it is literally that in the first level, the characters cannot die. It's a lot more like a skill system of you at first level can only have so many skills, and then past that you get more skills, and so on, so on, so on. Very RPG like. But I wanted that so that as someone is running a game for a group, or like the party is playing in a world, they're not having to think, as we're learning this game, we're going to die. After they get comfortable and know what they're doing, and they're stronger and more understandable, like more understanding of the world throw at them whatever they feel like they can handle. But the first couple sessions, if you decide you want to be level 1, if you literally play a 12 session campaign that you stay at level 1 because you're doing things slowly and taking your time, if they get comfortable and they're like, okay, you know what, let's go hunt something big, let's try to get stronger, let's try to level up, let's go for it, then they at least know what they're doing and they're comfortable. And this was a circumstance where I was trying to find the game for me, and there was something very particular that I wanted. And I realized if I couldn't just find it, then over time, I was going to take the time and make it. And it's a challenge and it's a lot of work, but I'm happy with it because I've been doing it for me over time and enjoyed it. I think that's the mechanic that I'd want to see in more games. I it's essentially a safety net. But if it was listed as a mechanic in games, I think more people would use it. It's a lot easier. Um, it's easier to choose not to use something that's offered than to have people look for something that they need to offer themselves. Which is why I like the idea of suggesting mechanics rather than saying that people have to use them. If they have that opportunity to use them, they can, but they don't have to. But if you have dozens and dozens of mechanics that are listed that people have to follow, then it's a lot to keep track of initially. If it's like, which ones would we like to use? Then I feel like it's a little bit more flexible. And flexibility and running games makes a world of a difference to me because keeping track of all that stuff is great and exhausting. Yeah. And I love it. How do you help find the game for you and all of your party members? That's a good question, and it's tough. I have a couple different answers. I don't think any one of them are strictly right, but I feel like they may help. First off, if you've already played a game together, all of you, what made them like that game? If the main factor of what they liked about the game was fantasy, then finding another fantasy game might not be as difficult as it feels. It will involve learning some new stuff, but there are plenty of fantasy tabletop games. If something that they liked was initiative, and that was the only thing that really stuck with them that they liked in it, if you adjusted that for a different system, I'm sure you could. So it's first asking what it is that they really liked about a system that you may have already played. What stuck out to them, and then what you could look for when you're looking for a game for the rest of you to try something new, to try something different. Or even if it's not looking for something to delve into differently, it might just be that they like mechanical aspects of it. And I'll actually bring that into this. If they only like the lore, you can retell lore in different systems. If I wanted to tell the lore of King Arthur, I could do that in at least 3 different systems I could name right now. Adapt it, alter it a little bit. Yeah. There's plenty of different ways that you can adapt the lore. If you wanted to tell a Mass Effect story inside of a couple different systems, you definitely could. And it's going to take a little bit of work to adapt it. It's probably going to take reskinning to make it work, but you absolutely could. The second thing, Talk to them about why you want to run that game, because they also will hopefully want to hear why you're excited about running it. If you have one in mind and there's a reason that you really like this game so much, or there's stuff that you like about it, talk about the stuff that you like, and then reassure them and confirm with them if there's stuff that they don't like. It doesn't have to be in the game. You're playing the game to have fun and tell the story together. And when you make that clear, when you make that excitement clear, and when you make that understanding clear, they understand I'm not being forced to play this game with this person. This person wants to play this game with me. It's not this person trying to get me to play this game with them. This person wants me to play this game with them. It's making them feel welcome, giving them that understanding that you are here to share this experience with them. And that makes a world of a difference. Knowing that someone wants to share an experience with you versus thinking you just want them to do it so that they can have fun, so that they can do whatever they want, so they can have their moment. Oh, it's awesome. I'm glad the weather's nice. And then the third thing that I would recommend when you're trying to find the game for you and all of your party members. When you're looking and discussing and figuring it out, you're all doing this together. And you might not all share the same ideas, but that's why compromise exists. It's okay to have compromise. You might not all agree on how initiative works. You might not all agree on how combat is going to work. But there can be compromise. This person might really want the fate point system. This person might not be a big fan of it. Maybe, instead of everyone having individual ones, there's a shared pool. And they can share that together. And then they convince that person to use it. Or they convince this person it might actually be a good idea. And then they get an opportunity to show why it would work. Because with compromise, people can use something. You're not telling them they have to. So those are my three real suggestions. It's a lot of conversation and communication, which is hard, and it might be that your group doesn't want to play that system at all, or there might be someone that doesn't want to play the system at all. And it might be that that person doesn't play. And if they're really adamant against not doing it, you're not at fault for that, by the way. This can be a game that you've been wanting to run for days, weeks, months, years even. And you're allowed to be excited, pumped up, ready for it. Like, so excited about it. You are not wrong for wanting to be excited and wanting to run this game, whatever the system is, because you've been excited. And someone else, they might have valid concerns. If they have valid concerns about uncomfort or like concepts in it, that is something to listen to. If they don't want to do it because they don't want to do anything different, then it's okay for you to delve into maybe having a different group that you play the system with. You might play this system with these 4 people, but you found a couple other people that really want to do this one. So there's a few more questions. Before we delve into those questions, I talked about finding the game for you. Very loosely, this does also relate to finding the group for you, because finding the game for you and the group for you to run might be different. The game that you want to run might not be for the group that you have. That's okay. That is entirely okay. That is entirely understandable. And that's entirely acceptable. You're allowed to have different groups of people that you play different games with. Also something that I had to learn to understand and accept. And when I did, I was like, oh, wow. I guess it's okay for me to have multiple groups of friends that I play games with. I don't have to have a circle, because That is the difference between community and clique. You might love playing this game with this group of people, and then it's amazing playing this other game with this group of people. And that is not saying that one group is better than the other. You love playing with both groups. I have a group that I play with on Sunday for a Dark Matter campaign, and I have a group that I play with on Monday that is starting Rime of the Frost Maiden. I love playing with both of them for entirely different reasons. My group on Sunday is chaotic, and we joke and laugh and have an amazing time. And my group on Monday is creative and strange and clever. And it's so awesome seeing how their brains work for things that I never even considered. And it was a way that I found games and groups for me. And it was a chance of having to put myself out there and being a little terrified of it might not go well. And I'm not even running these games. I'm just like a party member in these games. But I love it so much. You're allowed to have different groups of people that you play with. You're allowed to run different games for different groups of people. You're allowed to tell different stories in different circumstances. And I'm saying you're allowed because there were many times when I didn't feel like I was allowed to do these things. So I'm hoping that's a reassurance for you if you ever had it. You're allowed to do that. There is nothing wrong with doing that. That's my spiel. So yes, the rest of the questions. The whole point of this show is to make you feel comfortable in running games and telling stories and taking that wherever you want to be. You deserve that much. Do you recommend D20, D10, or D6 systems more for beginners? I honestly recommend D6 systems for beginners because I usually think you have less dice to work with. When it's a D20 or a D10 system, there's a good chance that they're going to be using more of the dice that are smaller than that. So if you have a D10, there's a good chance that you'll have D10, D8, D6, D4. If you have a D6 system, chances are it's going to be entirely D6s that you're using. They might have a D4 in there, they might have a D8, but with only one die to use, that's a whole lot less like number variety that you have to focus on. If it says like a 3 or a 4 on a stat, chances are you know that you're only rolling the D6s. That's a system that I haven't gotten a chance to work with many D6 systems, and I'm actually trying to do more of that because D6 systems in my experience have a lot of narrative on it because of focusing on less numerical values with less variety of dice, if that makes sense. I hope so. And Tales from the Loop is a D6 system, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I think it is. Yep. Yeah. Masks is 2d6. Masks is a very interesting game that focuses a lot on narrative storytelling with mechanics tied to the narrative storytelling. And then there's like individual workbooks. If you haven't seen Masks, take a look. It is a super powered tabletop role playing game. Very interesting. Is OVA, the anime role playing game published by Wise Turtle. I have heard of that as well, and it looked interesting. And it's true, more middle ground with 2d6 because 7 is the most common number you can roll, with a fun chance of getting snake eyes or 12. Question: what was the longest campaign? Oh no. Either played or ran from start to finish? And did it go for so long because it was the game for you? That's a great question. Whoa. Longest campaign I've run. I think the longest campaign I've run. You really did give me an anime style flashback. Um, I think the longest campaign I've run is either a Zweihander or a D&D. And those are two game systems that I've actually played a lot. And this is going to be an interesting statement. I like those game systems. And I think the reason that I like them so much is because I found them as the games for me. And there was a lot of stuff in there that I wasn't sure how much I wanted to manage and how much I wanted to do and how much I wanted to use. So I took the foundations of it and I made them the games for me. And that's something that I didn't say as much before. I talked about the foundations and finding the games for you and then adding to it. But you can find a game that you like with the system, a game that you like running with the system, and then make them into the games for you. Because I altered some of the mechanics to make it more fun and interesting. I think the I think the Zweihander campaign was it was like 8 or 9 weeks. And it was a haunted house murder mystery, which was entirely not something that was really like just normally built into the system. But I found the mechanics of it that I wanted to work with. I delved into them. I used a lot of the narrative and social skills, and it was so much fun. Um, I had a great time, and it was so much fun because I answered the question previously. I planned the start and finish, and then I actually just didn't figure out how the middle ground was going to work, and I had the players figure it out. And it's a D10 system technically, because you roll a D10 and the percentile D10, and then you're trying to roll underneath a stat value, a stat total, and that determines the success. It's actually a really interesting way to do it. But I enjoyed that because a lot of that was way less. It was way less math and more of just delving into creativity. It was delving into creativity, and it was like, okay, is it a success or is it a failure? Because I think that's what I like about a lot of systems. I like systems that tell me if I pass or fail from the die roll right off the bat, instead of having to do the math and then compare it to another number. I like if the system is saying, okay, roll 3d6. If you have any number that's above a 4, it's a success. So I rolled a 1, a 2, and a 5. The 5 was one success. I have one success. Maybe I needed 3, maybe I needed 4, but I don't have to do extra math to determine if it's going to work or not. And the success is just degrees of success. Maybe one success means nothing bad happens. That's enough for me. Oh, I love that. That's a mechanic I love. Yeah. Do you ever recommend people starting a new game taking on the rules they can feel they can manage and then add on more as people progress? Yes, 100% every time. Not worrying about daily meals and carrying capacity in D&D until you have the rest of the game in hand. I feel like that is one of the best ways to start running a game. If you give yourself too much to start, you may overwhelm yourself. And when you overwhelm yourself, you may find yourself not enjoying something anymore. There's a difference between doing something that is work that you enjoy and doing something that feels like work. If you start with the rules that you feel like you can manage and then you add on more and more and more, you're not going to give yourself a completely overwhelming information dump. Then you're not going to be as exhausted. Then you're not going to be as stressed out. Then you're not going to be frustrated and resent the things that you have to do. That's absolutely the way that I would recommend you do it. And I'm glad that you asked that question because that's what I do every time. I don't think I've ever started um, a tabletop game like as a GM where I used all of the rules that were available. or I kept track of all the rules that were available. I literally do not think I have ever done it, actually. Yeah. And I don't think I ever will. I like really a lot the idea of adding in rules and guidelines as you get further and further on. And if you've done it a bunch of times, if you've played through this game in a bunch of different sessions, if the party has played through the games in a bunch of different sessions, then you might feel comfortable adding in pretty much all the rules that you know. But then it's the difference of going in with that experience, that knowledge, that understanding, and everyone at the table sharing it versus finding a game that's really interesting and it has a bunch of rules that are interesting and you want to add some of them, but you only add one to start because if you add the other two and three, it might complicate it. It might add more to it that's like, okay, well, actually, if you do this with this and this with this, then this thing happens. And it's like, I just wanted to roll. I just wanted you to roll to see if you could flip the burger. But sure, okay. Right off the bat, I don't think I've ever even had a D&D game where in the first two sessions we thought about food. We ever thought about food or ever thought about carrying capacity. I don't think I have ever run a session where that has been the case. It comes up later sometimes, or even like I change rules. Instead of thinking that they have to actively eat, I will give them rewards for role playing eating. There was a system where I was running a game and they decided to sit down and have a meal and I gave each of them a luck point. I gave them each of them a fortune point. I gave each of them a free re-roll because they decided to play out the narrative of role playing eating. I assume that they eat. I assume they have the rations and whatever material to eat. It's just something that I assume, and it's not as much fun to narrate sometimes until they're like, actually, I would like to go up to the bartender and order a prime rib, please, with a little bit of sprinkled parsley. I'm like, that's interesting. Go on. And they give me this whole like meal that they want to make, and they spread out for the rest of the party. And it doesn't have to be an action. It doesn't have to be an ability. It's just awesome that they did that, that they cared, that they wanted to role play that. And I'm like, yes, take something bonus for making this interesting and fun for me too. Ah, it makes me smile thinking about it. One of the best pieces of advice that I can give you is find the games that have a foundation you want to work with. And then when you run them, make them the game for you if you have to. Find the foundation you want to work with and then make it into something even better that you enjoy. Because you are playing the game is not determining what you have to do. The game is giving you a set of guidelines and rules that you can follow. But if you don't want to, be a rebel. If the game tells you that you have to rest 8 hours to get a full rest, but you decide that you only want to do four and then like short rest of 30 minutes, you can do that. You can absolutely do that. If the game tells you that you need to rest a full day to recover all your wounds, but you're like, but I like the idea of us being able to move faster and like get more done, and you're all actually superhumans and super mutants. You can do whatever you want. If the game tells you that it takes a full day and you decide to make it 6 hours, you can do that. You might love every other mechanic in the game, and that's why you chose it. You might love the entire setting of the game and half of the mechanics, and that's why you chose it. You might love the way that the world of this game is defined, and then these two mechanics that are built into the system with the stats are freaking awesome, and that's why you chose it. You found the game that you want for you. And if it's not already that way, if it's not entirely that way, then we make it for you. Then we make it for you, and we make it for the people at your table. You make it into the experience that all of you want to have and all of you want to share. And then when you're having a great time, when you're playing whatever homebrew to whatever extent you want to do, you're not even thinking anymore about the rules that you had to change. You're thinking about the fun that you're having right now. If someone says, oh yeah, I play Call of Cthulhu, and they're like, oh, do you use like all these rules? They're so intense. Nah, we don't use that. But we have a great time. That fun, that great time, that's what matters more than anything else. You might love the setting. You might love some of the extra rules in Call of Cthulhu. And you don't use all of them, but you use the ones that you enjoy. And that's what makes that game for you. There is not a purity sense of how the game has to be for a game to be for you. That's perfectly right. Tabletop games is supposed to be for fun and not feel like a chore. If you homebrew stuff for people to have fun, that's what's important. And that's what matters when you're finding the game for you, when you're finding the game to run for this group of people or a new group of people. You're having fun together. And if one person wants to follow specific mechanics and the others necessarily don't, and the party is entirely okay with that, do it. One person might literally want to say, I actually do want to do the weight mechanic myself. And they want to keep track of it. And that's something they want to do. That's okay. It's okay to change your mind about what you homebrew, and it's okay to change balance. That's exactly right. I think there were a couple more questions. Um, so if you have any more, feel free to post them. Uh, Salty, that's a weird nickname. I think there might have been a couple more. Even now, seeing all of you talk about how the premise and focus is to be fun, that's what matters. What's the largest group you've ever run for? I just started DMing for the first time for a group of 7. Huh. It was 9. It was Um I was I was it was 5 years ago. And if I knew then what I knew now in terms of communication and conversation and generating a sense of respect at the table, and like, hey, if you have something to say, like even in games that I'm playing, I literally enthuse if someone wants to say something but they don't want to interrupt, to raise their hand. If we're having a conversation and a player does this, I know they have something they want to say but they don't want to interrupt or interject, and then I will give them my attention so I can ask what they want and then go to it. Make it important, bring it up, bring it interesting. Yeah, it's polite. And then it brings other people's attention knowing that you want to say something, and then they won't interrupt you. And it creates that respect at the table. And when I had that table of 9, everybody wanted to do something at once, everybody wanted to act at once, and it was really hard for me to manage that. But when I figured out how to just have that communication, be like, hey, just raise your hand, send me a message if you wanted to say something directly. Feel free to whisper me if you have an idea of what you want to do, so that I know that and like go into that idea, figuring it out. It's perfect. And so again, because we're on Roll20, I oftentimes have any of my party members send me a whisper if they have something they want to do while narrative is happening. If they're like, actually, Gabe, whenever before that shopkeep leaves, I want to attempt to pick their pocket. That little bit of communication, whenever I see it, whenever I know it, it's like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to let this scene play out. And then I'm going to make sure this person still gets their moment because I know that's what they wanted to do. And a macro idea for raising your hand right in Roll20 is genius. That is genius. Yeah, honestly, we're going to have another day where we talk about more of the mechanical side of Roll20 stuff, because I talked to you all about the game stuff working on, and Roll20 has been where I demo like a lot of my game projects because of having digital dice, having maps, being able to measure all of it. It's amazing. I think, let me see. Like if you haven't, we're gonna have a macro day. We're going to have a design day, but literally, like, I love that you can work on the map background, objects, tokens, layers, dynamic lighting, um, different effects, and measure the different distances of where everything is. even just do the digital dice rolls. So you can set up macros for all that stuff. And this is how, whenever I'm working on a game project, I do it digitally, because then I have all of my resources in one place. I don't have to lose dice. Um, I sometimes like the clinking sound of dice, but I don't always have 20 d6s to roll for some of the ridiculous things that I do. That's a separate. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you all for coming in. Is there a scheme for this stuff you'll be teaching me to plan around? Schedule. So I'm always here doing this stuff. Fridays from 10 a.m. to noon Pacific time. I'm sitting today. I actually made a bunch of outlines for the topics that I want to cover for the next couple weeks. And then I'll plan to get that up and out so people know what stuff is happening what day. That way you can have a specific idea of knowing what to come into. If you wanted to download some assets or get the Roll20 stuff up set up beforehand, so then you would know, because that way then we can actually work alongside together, which is exciting. Um, Again, thank you for coming in to Tabletop Table Talk with me on this Friday. Again, also, please check out the Tiltify for Roll20 with code 2040, which is a fantastic cause. And if you get a chance, just look at some of the stuff that they do. It is a lot of very important stuff that makes a world of a difference for people that don't always get the same opportunities. We have Roll20Con that is coming up October 23rd to the 25th. I will be doing stuff for the D&D celebration later today. At 4 p.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be working with Dr. B, Christina Ariel, a few others, and we're going to be building a adventure built around mental health and just understanding and awareness, overcoming fear and the weight of the world, because it's a terrifying thing. And in this world and day and age, we are doing the very best that we can to just function, which sometimes isn't just enough, but we keep going regardless. Thank you for coming to Tabletop Table Talk. I literally said that I want this to be about you being the best GM that you possibly can, being comfortable to delve into the world, being comfortable to tell stories, because you have that ability, capacity, and the world would be better with more stories by you in it. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you potentially later today, but hopefully, especially next Friday. You are chaotically creative. Keep it up.